Hey, everybody. Thanks for waiting. It has been one of those nights, but I'm still here with you. So thanks for waiting. Let's have yet another late night chat, shall we?
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just it's a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. It's just another one of these nights. And we're live, and I don't know. I'm got allergies, and it's one of those days. But I'm looking forward to heading to Florida for the Uhuru trial. I'll be supporting the Uhuru defendants. I'll be heading out to Florida on Friday. Looking forward to the big rally on Saturday to support the Uhuru defendants. Also looking forward to being there to support them during their court date at the trial when it opens on September 3rd. So that's all important. That's the coming Tuesday. So, got some travel coming up, and I try to stream as much as I can. Last night I was just exhausted. I didn't have it in me. Ongoing allergies and different projects I'm working on and all of that. But I'm back, and there is certainly lots to talk about. Morning messages. I guess I'll just jump right in. Well, first, hold up. First things first, the way we do things here on this channel, for those of you who may not be familiar, the way we do things on this channel is first I give my opening remarks, and then my opening remarks are followed by a roll call where I call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. We find out who's on the other side of the camera. It's always very exciting, always very, very exciting. Then from there, we do the roll call. I already said that part. We do the roll call. We'll do the roll call. And then from there, I answer your questions for the rest of the night. So if you have something you would like me to talk about in the second half of the show, I would like you to send me a super chat on YouTube, send me a Rumble rant on the Rumble, and I will answer your questions. That's the way it works. Always appreciate it. Please send super chats and Rumble rants. Give me something to talk about in the second half of the show. Me answering your questions is always a great way to do things. When people ask me a good question, when they throw me a softball and I hit it out of the park, or they ask me a tough one that really requires me to dig into my knowledge, it makes for great entertainment. And you all know that. You've all been here long enough to know that. Well, not all of you. Some of you might be new. But that's the way it works. So the second half of the show really is all up to you all. Now, a couple quick announcements. That's what we start every show with, a couple announcements. Let me pull up the announcement that I've got, kind of the ongoing announcement that we've got going on right here, which is that every morning on the CPI YouTube channel, we have morning messages. Start your day with revolutionary hope and optimism. The whole point of CPI is to be connected to a community of other people who are committed to anti-imperialism and the same values that we promote and share on this channel. And in order to have this community function, we need to support each other. We are here to support each other, to be there for each other, to inspire each other, to update each other on what's going on. So we want to provide this service for other members of the organization, other members of the community. We have a morning message, and our goal is to have one every single morning, every morning to have a morning message. And the morning message is a way to start your day with revolutionary hope and optimism. They're on the CPI YouTube channel. We have them each morning. Great way to start the show, start the day. Start your day with revolutionary hope and optimism on the CPI YouTube channel. And like I said, we try to have one every single morning, and we're on a pretty good streak right now. I think we missed a day a couple weeks ago, but we're on a pretty good streak. The morning message this morning was from me. We got someone from somebody else lined up for tomorrow. And I believe, yes, tomorrow's morning message will be the 125th morning message. So we're doing this. We're getting this done. And this is becoming a consistent part of CPI life. But I really would encourage you to listen to the morning message every day, right? If you want to stay engaged, if you want to remain optimistic, if you want to continue to carry out the mission of what we're trying to actually achieve with the Center for Political Innovation, I would really encourage you to listen to the morning message every day. And as a way to support your comrades, we now have this great link where you can submit a morning message of your own. And lately, a lot of people for their morning message have just been reading from one of the CPI books. It's just been something they do. They've been reading from the CPI books. They've been talking about what CPI stands for. They've been telling stories, but they just share something. Right? It's about connectedness. It's about community. It's about the mission that we are on as a community, because we are on a mission. There is a burning urgency for the kind of politics that we have, and I'll get into that later in the stream. But yes, go subscribe to the CPI YouTube channel and listen to the morning messages every day. And on top of that, submit a morning message. I would encourage you to submit a morning message. That's a great thing that you can do. Now, there's a couple things in the works, workshop coming up and stuff. There'll be more details on that soon. As I told y'all, I'm headed to Florida for the Uhuru trial later this week. If you're in Florida, I would go to Tampa or go to St. Petersburg, Florida, for the big Uhuru rally that's coming up. In fact, I might as well talk about that because, for all I know, there could be people watching in Florida, right? Why not? So, right, hands off Uhuru. The Uhuru 3 are 3 activists in St. Petersburg, Florida, and St. Louis, Missouri, who have been charged with being Russian agents for their anti-imperialist activism. And Tucker Carlson has had Chairman O'Malley, their leader, on to discuss the case. He's supporting them. Dr. Cornel West is supporting them. All kinds of very important voices realize how dangerous this case is, how dangerous the indictment of the Uhuru 3 is. Their trial will start on September 3rd, and it's very, very important, very important that people support them. That's why I'm getting on a plane and I'm headed to Florida. And I would really encourage you to find your way to the protest if you're in the area or whatnot. It's very, very important. We've been doing everything we can to raise awareness about the Uhuru case, as CPI, and we've actually been honored, by the Uhuru movement. They've honored us at a recent event in Boston. Chairman O'Malley urged us to stand up, because we have done so much to support them, because we take this seriously. So I will be in Florida to support the Uhuru defendants. That is coming up as well. So wanted to mention that in addition to the morning messages. So, I'm going to jump into my opening remarks for tonight. I'll be making my opening remarks. Then from there, we will do the roll call, and I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. And then from there, I will answer your questions. Battle Cossack just sent in his first question. So that's good. I will answer questions in the second half of our show. And that's the way we will do things. So yeah, let's do it. Let's do it, folks. Yeah, I guess I'll just jump into it. So the world is reacting to the fact that the French government arrested Pavel Durov. Now, Pavel Durov is the creator of the communication, messaging, and social media app known as Telegram. And he's been arrested by French authorities. And the charges against him are very similar to the charges for which Ross Ulbricht was imprisoned, and to the charges upon which the founder of Mega Uploads, Kim.com, is being extradited to the United States from New Zealand. He's a German citizen. The charges against him are that people have used his platform to do illegal things. That people have used his platform for child pornography. People have used his platform for selling drugs. People have used his platform to embezzle money, etc. And when it gets down to it, the details of the case really just amount to the fact that he has not given a back channel or a back door to the Western intelligence agencies. And that Telegram has become a platform through which anti-Israel views and pro-Russian views and views that are suppressed in mainstream outlets are communicated. And Pavel Durov is a dual Russian and French citizen. And at the time that he refused to give a backdoor to Russian government officials, at the time they wanted one, he was widely praised in American media. And he was widely praised in Western media for doing that. But as he has continued to not give a backdoor to Western agencies as well, now he has been arrested and he is sitting in a French jail. And this, of course, has large implications for the world of alternative media. You know, every alternative media voice you ever heard of has a Telegram channel through which their ideas are disseminated. Telegram is one of the main ways that people reporting on the Ukraine conflict, people reporting on the crisis in Gaza, have been communicating. It's been through Telegram. And now the founder of that app is sitting in a French jail, charged with very serious crimes that more or less amount to people without his knowledge did illegal and bad things on his platform, which they could jail Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook for anytime. They could jail Elon Musk of Twitter for anytime. They could jail the owners of Instagram anytime. Right? I mean, it would be the equivalent of if you paved a road and a kidnapper drove down the road with his victim, you would be, an accomplice to the kidnapping. That is the essential aspect of those charges. But that didn't stop them from imprisoning Ross Ulbricht. It didn't stop them from indicting and now extraditing Kim.com. But things get even more interesting. Even more interesting. Because in the aftermath, less than 48 hours after the arrest of Pavel Durov, we have Mark Zuckerberg the owner of Meta, the founder of Facebook, coming forward and making a public statement about a story that many of us have discussed for a long time. Very important public statement, letter, published by Mark Zuckerberg. So, if you all will remember the 2020 election, Biden won and Donald Trump lost. And there was a big news story that was released shortly before the election, but heavily suppressed in American media. And that big news story was Hunter Biden's laptop. Hunter Biden, the son of Joe Biden, is at the center of all kinds of corruption scandals. I mean, the amount of corruption associated with Hunter Biden is insane. First of all, he sells paintings. He's got no background in the arts, didn't go to art school, but he sells paintings for $500,000. And everyone who sees Hunter Biden selling these paintings knows exactly what's going on. And this is bribery. Hunter Biden just so happens to be a really good artist, and wealthy people are buying his paintings for $500,000, $2 million as a way of funneling money to President Biden. Bribery. But that's not all that we know about Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden was involved in the scandal with Burisma Holdings right after the 2014 Ukraine coup. The government of Ukraine was overthrown. And then a natural gas company in Ukraine called Burisma Holdings hired Hunter Biden and paid him a really fancy salary. 6 figures. And this natural gas company hired Hunter Biden, the vice president then of the United States in 2014, hired him even though he knew nothing about natural gas. He had no experience in the energy sector or whatever. They just happened to hire the vice president of the United States' son at the same time that the United States overthrew the Ukrainian government. And later, there was a prosecutor in Ukraine who was investigating Burisma Holdings for corruption. And Biden bragged before the Council on Foreign Relations about how he got that prosecutor fired. And he called him up and he said, "You will not get the money until that prosecutor is fired." And Biden bragged about how he protected Burisma Holdings from an investigation. And so Hunter Biden is at the middle of many scandals. And there's all kinds of other things that are alleged. And, smoking crack and prostitutes and all kinds of stuff. Hunter Biden is, he was kicked out of the U.S. Navy for using cocaine. And he's got a record of troubling behavior. And he's tied to a lot of questionable behavior. And his laptop had a lot of photographs on it, had a lot of information on it about scandalous things. And the computer repair shop that he took his laptop to decided to bring his laptop to the media. Now, the New York Post reported it on what was in Hunter Biden's laptop. And immediately, Facebook banned the story. The New York Post link to the Hunter Biden laptop story became impossible to share. Twitter did the same thing. And the story was suppressed. Why was it suppressed? Well, we found out that the FBI went to Facebook and went to Twitter and said that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian propaganda. And a number of former U.S. intelligence officials all signed a letter saying that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian propaganda. And during a debate, Joe Biden himself, they asked him about the laptop. He said, no, that's a Russian propaganda story. Well, after the election, in which the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop was not up for debate, in which mainstream U.S. media just said, don't pay any attention to it, Russian propaganda, in which the link to the story in the New York Post was blocked. You could not send it in a Facebook message. You could not post the link. It was blocked. After that, well, the New York Times admitted that the story was true. It was actually a true story. And other government officials came forward and said there was absolutely no evidence that the Hunter Biden laptop story originated in Russia or some kind of Russian propaganda smear. And that everything about the story was true. And it appears that the FBI was suppressing a story for the benefit of one particular candidate. So yes, the 2020 elections were rigged. They were rigged by the FBI, and they were rigged by Facebook and Twitter. And now we have confirmation of this from Mark Zuckerberg. In the aftermath of the arrest of Pavel Durov, Mark Zuckerberg comes forward with his letter saying that yes, Facebook has engaged in censorship on the orders of the American government. Very interesting. Elon Musk is supporting Pavel Durov and condemning his arrest, as is Tucker Carlson, as are a lot of people. And we are gearing up for a very, very big confrontation within the U.S. power structure. Now, I have been saying for the longest time, I wrote an article saying it, etc., that there are three possible outcomes for the upcoming election. The first outcome is a Kamala Harris victory, which would be followed by a heavy crackdown. Why would the Kamala Harris victory be followed by a heavy crackdown? One, because Trump supporters wouldn't consider it legitimate and would go out and protest and would be heavily suppressed. Two, because the crackdown is already happening. The Biden administration is prosecuting the Uhuru 3, alleging that they are Russian agents. The Biden administration has imprisoned a number of Trump supporters, alleging that they were trying to overthrow the government on January 6th. Because the Biden administration has prosecuted Sumi Terry, the top Korea scholar, an advisor to the Biden administration, or to the Obama and Bush administrations, because South Korea doesn't want to play ball with the escalation on the Korean Peninsula against North Korea that the United States wants. So already the Biden administration is rolling ahead with political suppression. And if Kamala Harris is victorious at the polls, you can be sure they will march as full speed ahead with their censorship and political suppression as they can. That is the worst case scenario. A Kamala Harris victory followed by heavy repression. However, what I predicted was the most likely result of the upcoming election was that Donald Trump would win in a surge of disgust with the establishment, and that the establishment would then try to ride Trump's victory to amplify the negative aspects of Trumpism, the pro-Israel, anti-immigrant, pro-police, pro-privatization, free market aspects of Trumpism would get amped up as they tried to ride the wave of populism, of a Trump victory. And I still maintain that is the most likely outcome of the election. But I also said there was a third possibility for the upcoming election, which is a long shot, which is unlikely, but is possible, which would be Donald Trump winning, but winning from a fully defensive position in opposition to the bulk of the American state apparatus and the bulk of his class. And under such circumstances, Donald Trump would be forced to enact very dramatic policies to improve the lives of working people in order to maintain public support. Now, that third situation, I said, is very unlikely, and it would be the best possible outcome. But it's very unlikely because the social media giants, the tech monopolies, the mainstream media is very powerful. And if Donald Trump is going to have a chance of winning, which it really does look like he has a very good chance of winning, that's because they allowed it, because he's accommodated them to some degree. However, folks, I am seeing some interesting things. Now, I want to get this out before we go any further. I would like to get this out. Folks, Tulsi Gabbard disappointed all of us. Well, maybe not all of us, but most of us, with her pro-Israeli stance. I have been utterly disgusted by many things Tulsi Gabbard has said about Israel and about the Middle East. And many of them even cancel out the good things that Tulsi Gabbard has said in the past. Many of them effectively cancel out the very, very good things she said before. Blaming Iran for October 7th, etc. So, no question about it. RFK has also disappointed many of us. Many of us were very excited when he first ran. We were confused and disappointed when he talked about Israel, but whatever. But then after October 7th, RFK disgusted all of us. Now, I have to say that. RFK and Tulsi Gabbard are disgustingly pro-Israel, disgusting apologists for Israel's genocide in Gaza. But that said, that is not the reason that mainstream U.S. media hates them. Mainstream U.S. media is not angry at Tulsi Gabbard for the same reason I am or you are. Mainstream media is not angry at RFK for the same reasons that I am or you are. Mainstream media is angry at RFK and Tulsi Gabbard for what they've said about Russia, what they've said about Syria, and in RFK's case, specifically what he has said about the vaccine mandates and the lockdowns, and about biolabs. Simply pointing out what was admitted on the floor of Congress about the biolabs. You're apparently spreading conspiracy theories. You're. That's why they hate them. But you will notice that yesterday, Donald Trump rolled out the red carpet for Tulsi Gabbard, accepted her endorsement. And on top of that, on Friday, RFK suspended his presidential campaign and endorsed Donald Trump. Now, let's be clear. Perhaps to you and me, RFK and Tulsi are known as big Zionists. In mainstream politics, they are known as Russia sympathizers, They are known as conspiracy theorists. They are known as anti-war and anti-establishment voices. And Donald Trump has decided not to snub them, but to embrace them. That's huge. And again, I must say, I am irritated. I am irritated on a number of levels by a number of things, but what else is new? I'm always irritated. I am irritated with people not understanding that politics is not a matter of good people versus bad people. It is a matter of the balance of forces. And Donald Trump pandering to Tulsi Gabbard and her supporters, and pandering to RFK and his supporters. Donald Trump speaking at the Libertarian Party National Convention on the same stage as my friend Angela McCurdle, the head of the Libertarian Party. This is a very, very good sign. It's a very, very good sign. It does not mean that Trump will do good things as president necessarily. It does not mean that Trump will do good things. What it means is that Donald Trump is currently appealing to the best in people. He's appealing to people's anti-war and anti-establishment sentiments, and he is doing so without shame. Furthermore, there's many layers to this. Furthermore, right, you all know I wrote a book about Kamala Harris and the Future of America, an essay in 3 parts, and that this book was published in 2020. In 2020, this book was published. And that after 4 years of being available on Amazon, it was pulled. On the very day that on the very day that Kamala Harris became the nominee of the Democratic Party, the very day, Sunday, Joe Biden stepped down. Monday, Kamala Harris was being treated as the presumptive nominee, and that's the day they banned my book. And it's 7 days my book was banned, from July 22nd to July 29th. My book was banned from Amazon.com. And it was up on Lulu, and then they started transitioning. They started not accepting the Lulu transactions, but then starting the following Monday, 7 days later, everything was fine with my book. My book was all A-okay. Now, what happened on the same day that my book was banned? The same day that my book was banned, Tulsi Gabbard was put on the Quiet Skies terrorism watch list. On the very, very same day. And what does my book discuss at length? It discusses Tulsi Gabbard, her ties to the military, and why she's opposed to Kamala Harris. But then, even though she's been placed on this terrorist Quiet Skies watch list, Donald Trump is embracing Tulsi Gabbard. I'm telling you, there are things happening there are things happening beneath the surface that are very exciting. And you can choose to be part of this and to intervene in this process or not. And I have spent years doing this, and I'm going to teach you a little bit of what I know. All right. So when I was a young person, everybody told me communism is when everyone gets paid the exact same wage, no matter how hard they work. And I didn't know anything. Gradually, I started reading the different books. I got involved with communist groups. I started doing real activism. But I feel like I didn't really start to understand the Marxist worldview. I didn't even get a taste of it until the financial crisis of 2008. When the financial crisis of 2008 happened, Fred Goldstein, a leader of the Workers' World Party, went on a speaking tour. He wrote a book called Low-Wage Capitalism, and he went on a speaking tour explaining why the financial crisis had happened. And he talked about the tendency of the falling rate of profit, and he talked about overproduction and human labor being replaced by technology. And all of that was extremely illuminating for me. And the organization that I was a member of, the Workers' World Party, began talking about the history of the Communist Party during the Great Depression, the unemployment councils, etc. And I had already read some of William Z. Foster's work. And so I started reading the work of William Z. Foster, and I read the history of the three internationals. And in that very important book, The History of the Three Internationals, I learned about Karl Marx and his support for Abraham Lincoln. And I learned about Karl Marx and his disagreements with the anarchists. And I learned about the Second International and the fall of the Second International. And I read The History of the Three Internationals by William Z. Foster. And at that point, I was starting to bite in to an actual Marxist understanding of how history is driven forward, how conflict and change and the different forces, how history is made. And it's been a long journey since then. I'm very thankful for the fact that I moved to New York City. Very thankful for the mentorship I received from some older anti-imperialist activists. I'm very thankful for the opportunities I've had to travel around the world. And I get it on some level now. I'm always learning, just like all of us. And there have been some big developments in the last few months that I appreciate. They might be frustrating, but I appreciate them. Everything is lining up, and I'm understanding the world more and more and more. I understood the world enough to write this book about Kamala Harris 4 years ago, and look how right I was. I understood the world enough to see a lot of things, and things are adding up for me, and I am understanding things on a higher level now. I'm understanding things on a higher level than I've understood them before. I started out studying politics. When I was in college, I studied political science. I studied the communist politics, but I really didn't understand things until I started to study economics, and then when I started to study psychology, in particular psychoanalysis and the Freudian worldview and the Freudian analysis of people's motivations, their subconscious intentions. But I'm telling you, we are on the precipice of very big things. And I could sense it. And I didn't sense it in some psychic sense. I saw what was happening. And even before Donald Trump was, faced the attempted assassination, I was tweeting about how the world is shaking and big things are shifting. Things are really dramatically changing right now. And the understanding that I have that has gotten me so far has forced a shift in tactics and strategy that is absolutely necessary. Because it is absolutely not correct to be trying to own the word communist in our time. And a lot of you watching this get it, and a lot of you don't. And I would like you to get it, and I would like you to understand that. But if you don't, you don't. The word communist has a satanic appeal. It doesn't have that in China. To be a communist in China means you're the upstanding citizen. You get A pluses on all your tests. You're very loyal to the homeland. To be a communist in Cuba does not have that understanding. To be a communist even in Russia, where the communists are not in power, it doesn't have that understanding. But in America, communism has a satanic appeal. And I admit that I was attracted to it as a teen because of its satanic appeal. I was angry at society. I was angry at my life situation and my family. And I was angry about a lot of different things. And I was frustrated with people around me and how they couldn't seem to understand the way the world was. And they were blindly supporting the war in Iraq. And that led me out of my opposition to the society I lived in, out of my feelings of alienation from the society I lived in, to embrace a forbidden concept, to embrace something that has the label of the devil in the West. And I've been on a journey ever since. And I've learned a lot, and I've healed a lot, and I've rediscovered my Christian faith, and a lot has gone on. But I realized for me that my step into communism was based on an experience that cannot be the basis of any serious political movement. And as hard as that is to realize, and as hard as that is to understand, it's just something we have to come to terms with. There's nothing wrong with loving your country. Nothing. Nothing at all. If you are boastful and you say, my country's the greatest, and you put down other countries, that's problematic. If you gloss over bad things your country has done, that's problematic. But having a feeling of loyalty to one's country is just the most normal, natural, healthy thing. And one common critique of communists is that we seem to love every country except our own. That's a fair point. My entire life as a communist, I've been saying hands off Yemen. I've been saying peace with Russia, peace with China. I've been studying the work of Lenin. I've been studying Fidel Castro. I've been studying Islam and Kim Il-sung and all kinds of exotic things. But yet, when I talk about America, oh, yawn. Oh, yeah, George Washington. Who cares about that? Oh, yeah, Abraham Lincoln. Well, that might be how I felt at the time. But to most people, that would be the equivalent of a man who Googles and looks at and finds attractive and buys flowers for every woman except his own wife. What would you think about a man who did that, right? He's married, but yet he's going around buying flowers and going around talking about how beautiful every woman is except his own wife. Would you think highly of that man? Of course you wouldn't. You wouldn't think very highly of a person who did that. But that's not how people attracted to the word communism think. In fact, we tend to think, unfortunately, the prevailing trend in leftist circles is to think that if you get emotional about how much you love America, if you tear up when you hear the Star-Spangled Banner, if you talk about our history and what it means to be an American, you're a fool. You're stupid. You're lame. You're brainwashed. I'm just telling you, folks, that's because the kind of people that are attracted to communism are people that are alienated, are people that feel hostility toward the society they live in, and are people that are, to some degree or other, alienated from the natural feelings that everyone here feels. And you can say the same thing about Christianity. It's a little different, obviously, if you grew up in the Jewish faith or you grew up in the Islamic faith, it's a little bit different. But for the bulk of the American population, especially those who grew up in Christianity, we have the attitude that people are Christians because they're stupid. People are patriotic because they're stupid. I mean, this is... And that what it has taken me years and years to realize is that the only type of socialism or communism that will ever come to this country will be a communism or socialism based on loving this country and not pretending to love this country to trick people, but really loving this country. The only way you will ever get people to go out and fight against imperialism and sacrifice and put themselves at risk and stand up is if they do it based on deep feelings of love. And that's a really hard thing to understand. But people will not go out and fight and die to make America a better place if they don't love it. And if you want to be alienated and you want to be smarter than such people, that's fine. You can do that, but do not pretend you're ever serious about taking power. One of the points, this psychology book I am reading right now, brilliant book by Reuben Osborne, he makes the point. He makes the point that in Britain, the fascists, the British Union of Fascists, Oswald Mosley, they appealed to the best in people, but for evil. They used that for evil. They appealed to people's love of country, love of homeland. They appealed to people's outrage about economic injustice. They appealed to people's want for peace in their communities. And they appealed to people's natural, good, wholesome feelings, but they used that for evil, for anti-Semitism, for support for the Nazis, for anti-labor sentiments, for anti-communism. And he's telling the British Communist Party in 1937, when he wrote this book, that if they ever want to have a chance, they have got to start appealing to the best feelings in people as well. And they need to get over appealing to the worst in people. And unfortunately, folks, communism in America, the way it is set up, appeals to the worst in people. Right? It appeals to the worst in people. I'll send you the link, Tyler. I'll put the link in the chat. It's a very good book. It appeals to the worst in people. And that's what we have to deal with. And until we stop doing that, any movement that we build is going to be cursed. Right? Here's the link. Psychology of Reaction by Reuben Osborne on archive.org. Any movement that we build is going to be cursed from the beginning if we don't appeal to the best in people. If we appeal to the worst in people, right, we are going to have a movement that's going to have very, very big difficulties. Very, very big difficulties. And that appealing to the worst in people, it comes out of the struggle to overthrow feudalism, right? Feudalism was an unleashing of Oedipal and libidinal feelings to uproot a society that was very authoritarian, hierarchical, traditional, patriarchal, etc. In feudalism, everyone exactly knows their place. There's no disobedience. There's no challenging of authority. And so the natural libidinal and Oedipal feelings people had exploded to overthrow feudalism. And communism comes out of that tradition, of the French Revolution, of the guillotine, of that tradition. And that tradition is a curse. And the global communist movement has done everything it can to get away from that. And in the West, communism is still attached to that mindset. And we have to move away from that. And if we don't move away from that, we cannot build a movement on that basis. Number one, because it's going to be cursed, because it's going to be based on othering. And number two, being in opposition to the people around us. But number two, because the ruling class is way better at it than we are. Facebook is very good at stirring people up and triggering them and finding exactly what makes them mad and getting them really, really mad to go out and be mad. Facebook is great at that. They don't need us for that. Facebook is really, really good at getting people to unleash their anger, getting people to unleash their rage. You know, the internet is great there's all kinds of porn and sexual stuff to look at. I mean, if that's what we're trying to win people over with, by giving them a sense of sexual release, anger release, rage, if that's what we're doing, we've already lost the game, because our enemies can do that way, way better than we can. However, and this is an important point, and I went on a little tangent there. I kind of went away from my main point, but that's okay. That's okay. I see people are sending super chats and they are not going through. That's odd. That's odd. This is 2 people have messaged me that they sent a super chat and it didn't go through. That's odd. That is extremely odd. But maybe try again. I don't know what to say. But I must say that what we need right now, more than anything, is a network of people who can carry out operations. And that is not obvious. It is not obvious that that's what we need. You have to learn that from struggle. You have to learn that from doing it. You know, when you think about forming a political party, you think, well, you form a group of people and they all go out and vote for that political party. Not in the realm of politics we're in. In Democratic politics and Republican politics, maybe Green Party, Libertarian politics, that's what you do. But in the realm of politics that we are in, it is not a matter of getting on the ballot and getting votes. And they say, okay, well, it's a matter of getting people to sign up, getting membership in your organization. Your membership organization can have 7,000 members, 8,000 members. Get a lot of members from your organization. No. Wrong. No, that's not what it's about. It is about how well you can carry out operations. And what we need in America right now is a group of people who can come together and effectively carry out operations. A group of people who know each other, a group of people who learn how to work with each other, learn each other's strengths, and gradually challenge each other to do more. That is what we need. Right now in America, we need an anti-imperialist action network. We need a community of people who are committed to these ideas, committed to teaching these ideas, and committed to carrying out operations to spread awareness and the truth about imperialism, about the struggles going on in America, and can cooperate to get effective operations done toward that end. And that's what we need, right? That is what we need, an anti-imperialist action network. And an anti-imperialist action network, look, you might get a bunch of people to sign up, but if they're not helpful in carrying out operations, that really doesn't mean much. And the kinds of people that you might get to agree with you on the internet. And this is something I haven't always known. I've learned gradually, but I'm really coming to terms with it now. The kinds of people that might agree with you on the internet are often not the kinds of people that are helpful in actually carrying out operations. They're not. Okay? And that we need to construct the kind of organization that is effective in recruiting the kind of people that are helpful in carrying out operations. And we need to carry out operations, and we need to learn to work together to carry out operations. We have carried out a number of very effective operations as the Center for Political Innovation. And I'm proud, I'm amazed at what we've been able to do. But we need to come to terms with the fact that that is why we exist. We do not exist to have a huge membership list. I mean, we don't. It would be great, more people, because they can carry out operations. But just people signing up at the end of the day doesn't really help us that much. We certainly don't exist to run for office. We're not a political party. We exist to carry out operations. And I can give you a whole list of everything that we have done. We led the American delegation to the World Youth Festival in Russia. We met Putin. We raised the Uhuru case in Russia. We were observers of the Russian presidential election. That's an operation. When Yemen was blocking ships to support the Palestinians, we published a book about the Houthi movement. Who are the Houthis? What are they fighting for? And then from there, we had a day of action to support the Houthis. That is an operation. We have been raising the issue of peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. At the White House, we have raised the issue. We have had events to raise the issue. We have unfurled banners about it. That is an operation. The Libertarian Party was having a convention, and I was really impressed with how we pulled this off. The Libertarian Party was having its national convention in Washington, D.C. We had very little time. It was in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump was speaking. My friend Angela said I could get in, gave me full access. So I said, all right, Donald Trump, U.S. presidential candidate, is speaking. Libertarian Party that is anti-war, that supports Julian Assange and is pro-free speech and is against government repression and is friendly to China and friendly to Russia and free trade, whatever. They're having a convention. So what did I do? I called up a certain person. I called up another person. I wrote a pamphlet. I called up Peter Coffin. He edited the pamphlet and made some big changes to it. I called up another person, and I called up another person, and we got the money together, and we got the graphic design together, and we made the cover of the pamphlet, and we wrote the interior text of the pamphlet. We got the money together. We went to the printer. We printed 1,000 copies of this, and we blanketed the Libertarian Party convention with this pamphlet. The Libertarian Party convention had a national gathering. And you couldn't walk 2 feet in the Libertarian convention without seeing one of these. When I went in to see Donald Trump You know, they search your bags on the way in. I opened my bag. I had a bunch of these. The security guard said, "Oh, you're the guy handing those out. Man, how many of those did you print? How many of those did you print?" I said, 1,000. You couldn't go 2 feet in the Libertarian Party convention without seeing a copy of Do You Believe in Growth? We blanketed the place in this pamphlet. And we did it fast, and it wasn't easy. It was not easy to find the printer, to get the funds together, to get the layout, to get the cover design, and to get the QR code on the back and get the but we did it. We did it really fast. That's an operation, right? My book on Kamala Harris got banned from Amazon. So what did we do? Peter designed a new cover for it. I wrote a new introduction. We made some calls. We got 1,000 of them printed. We got another 1,000 copies of this printed. We drove them to Chicago after getting them printed. And then we had a team of people who handed them out everywhere in Chicago during the Democratic National Convention. These are operations. These are called operations, right? When Tsai Ing-wen, the so-called president of Taiwan, was speaking in New York City, we got 5 of our comrades there. We unfurled big banners and we confronted Tsai Ing-wen. Stop selling war in our country. That was an operation. When Scott Ritter was banned from speaking at the Rage Against the War Machine rally, when he was banned, he was unable to speak, we set up a special reception for Scott Ritter. And he spoke at our special reception that we had after the Rage Against the War Machine rally. That is an operation. There are many, many operations that CPI exists. That is why we exist. It is to carry out operations. And the operations that we are carrying out are going to be so important in the coming months. First thing, and I make no bones about this, if Donald Trump wins, this is what needs to happen. If Donald Trump wins on election night, there needs to be huge banners of Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un shaking hands everywhere. We need to be at Trump Tower with a huge, I'm talking huge banner of Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un shaking hands to say this is a mandate for peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. We need to amplify the peace with North Korea aspect of Trumpism, right? And we will do that. Won't be easy, but we'll get the banners printed and we'll get it done. And when Trump wins the upcoming election, you will see our banners, and that message will be amplified among Trump supporters that this is a mandate for peace on the Korean Peninsula. We'll do it. That will be an operation, right? Coming up, July 12th, 2025, we are going to have a national convention of the Center for Political Innovation. July 12th, 2025, near the Chicago area. We're finding the venue as we speak. It looks like we might do it in one place. We might do it in another place. But in July of next year, we are going to have a rally in the Chicago area, an anti-imperialist convention with 400 people. And we're going to do it, 400 people. We are going to spend the year building it, making alliances with people, learning the art of generating a big crowd. We've had conventions before, 100 to 200 people, usually our members that fly in from around the country, and that's great, and they should fly in for our national convention next July. But we need to do better than that. We need to be able to put on massive events to show support for anti-imperialism, and so we are taking this year to learn to do it. And in Chicago, next year, July 12th, 2025, we are going to have a 400-person, probably more than 400 people, gather in Chicago for a huge all-day mega anti-imperialist rally. We're going to do it. We're going to do it because we have to learn to carry out operations. And that is why we exist. We exist to carry out operations. And being a member of CPI means you are helping us carry out operations. It won't let people super chat. This is bizarre. The Silicon Valley fascists don't want me to have the income of the super chats. They don't want people to ask their questions. Some questions have gotten through. 5 have gone through so far, but others have not. This is interesting. Regardless, we are going to have a 400-person anti-imperialist rally in Chicago next summer. We're going to do it. And it's not easy to generate a crowd of 400 people, but that's what we've got to learn to do. We have got to do it. We have got to do it. We have got to do it. And that is why we exist. We exist to carry out operations. That's why we exist. And more than ever, look, I'm going to Florida this weekend. Why am I going to Florida this weekend? Well, on Saturday, there's a huge rally at the Uhuru house that was just raided. And, the Uhuru 3 are about to go on trial. I will be speaking at this rally. That's an operation. On Tuesday, their trial will start. And Dr. Cornel West and Max Blumenthal and Tucker Carlson and all kinds of people are going to be there to support the Uhuru 3 on the first day of their trial. And I'm going to be there. And John McCarthy, our member, is going to be there. That's an operation. We exist to build anti-imperialism and to spread the anti-imperialist message in America and to show that there is an anti-imperialist voice in American politics. That is why we exist. We exist to spread anti-imperialism in America. And that's it. And the way we will get it done is we'll have a network of reliable people who trust each other, who know they can work with each other, who don't judge each other, who don't put each other down, but who get that thrill of being part of it. Being part of it. Folks, I have got to say, when I talk about people being attracted to communism for satanic reasons, I have heard it all. I've heard it all, and I've heard my own voice in past times in my life. And that's why I can forgive. But I have heard it all. I've heard it all. And I hear them say these things, and I feel sorry for them. But I hear them say things, why do all these people still like you? Well, because I work with them. Because they're my friends. Because we've come together and we've carried out operations together. Because we've gotten the thrill and the joy of going out and getting things done together. That's why they still like me, despite the fact that I'm not cool on the internet like your favorite jack off online. Why do all these people still like you? Because we do things together. Because we care about each other. That's why. And I've heard it all. I've heard it all. Why don't these people know who I am? Because you're not working with them. Because you're not coming to the events. Because you're not bonding with them. You're not helping us carry out operations. You're somebody online that you're a name they may have heard a couple times, but they don't know who you are. Look, if you want happiness in this life, there are 2 ways to get it. There are 2 ways that you can get happiness in life. And you can get them in various ways. The first way is love and connection with other people. That's why people get married. That's why people have children. That's why they hang out with their friends on Saturday night. That's why they do anything, right? Love and connections with other people will bring you happiness. 2, another way to get happiness is to create, to work hard for something, to achieve something, to build something, to create. And the Center for Political Innovation exists to help you do those 2 things, to have love and comradeship with other people, and with those other people to go out and build. And the door is open. If you want to be part of it, come on board. Help us build and help bond with other people. And that is why we exist. And we want to bond with other people and connect with other people and have comradeship around our anti-imperialist understanding and our innovationist worldview. And on top of that, we want to build. We want to go out and carry out operations and teach people that Russia is not our enemy, and teach people that we need a new America with a government of action that fights for working families. We want to do that. That's another way that we exist is to go out and create, and going out and creating and doing things creates joy. And we exist in order to enable you to do the two things that can bring you happiness. I'm not saying that everything in your life is going to be randy dandy afterwards. I'm not saying that you won't be disappointed. I'm not saying you won't get frustrated. I'm not saying that people won't get on your nerves. But CPI exists so that you can do the two things that generally bring people happiness, which you will do in other ways in your life. You'll build things, you'll have connections in other ways in your life too. But we exist to serve the purpose of helping you to find happiness in these two ways, right? And to carry out operations, because at the end of the day, this is what is going to make the difference. This is what is going to make the difference. If we can build a network of people that are committed to anti-imperialism, we can make a difference. We can nudge the boulder. And folks, I am just going to say this. And I said this earlier when I was interviewed by Dr. Wilmer Leon for his upcoming podcast. The explosion is coming, folks. The explosion is coming. I can feel it in my bones. I can feel it in my feet. I can feel it in my nostrils. I can feel it in my head. I can feel it beneath the surface. The earth is shaking. The earth is shaking, and it's going to happen, folks. The volcano is going to blow up. The avalanche is coming down the mountain. It's happening, okay? I don't know how soon it's happening, but it's happening. And our job isn't to make it happen. We ain't going to be the ones that make it happen. It'll happen because of deteriorating economic conditions. It'll happen because people are tired of the cancel culture and the police state that they're building. It'll happen because people are alienated, but it's coming. It is coming. The powder keg is going to blow. The fuse is going down to the bomb. It's happening, folks. What we exist to do is to nudge it in the right direction. That's what we exist to do. And it's coming, folks. It is coming. You listen to the fact that Donald Trump is getting closer to Tulsi, getting closer to RFK, the fact that Kamala Harris is putting, Tulsi Gabbard on the terrorism watch list and banning my book. It's coming, folks. It's coming. The ground is shaking, and it's coming, and it's coming, and it's coming, and it's coming, and it's coming. And the masses of people are the real heroes. Let me emphasize that again. The masses of people are the real heroes. We can't hate the masses of people because they don't have our political understanding. We can't look down on them because at the end of the day, they're the real heroes. They are going to do things that will blow our minds. They are going to engage in heroism and strength that will shock us. We're too intellectual. I'll just be honest with you. We're too intellectual. All right? We think things through a little bit too much. I heard the story years ago, and it was a story that Sam Marcy used to tell. Sam Marcy was a lawyer for a labor union in the Workers' World Party. And he would tell the story of there was a worker that he represented who sued his boss, who had there was some kind of negotiation. He had to sue his boss. And the worker was so humble and so submissive. He had a hat, and he went on to the hearing, and he walked into the hearing with his boss, with his head down, in such a submissive way. This steel worker was so convinced the boss had the right to kick him around, and was so submissive, wasn't going to fight back, wasn't going to rebel. Went in with his hat held in his hand, just submitting to the boss. But Sam Marcy got that worker to start coming to the communist office in Buffalo and start listening to the speeches. And a couple of years later, the steel workers in Buffalo were on strike. And there was a scab who tried to cross the picket line. And that very same worker who'd had his head down and all of that, he was running out there, and he punches the scab in the face, and the scab falls to the ground, and he's kicking him, and he's saying, "You're not going to take my job away from him." And he starts beating on this scab. And at that point, Sam Marcy and the leaders of the Workers' World Party are running up, and they're holding him back. they're saying, come on now, don't kill him. Don't kill him. It was a change in consciousness. A change in consciousness. Another story that I heard. Well, it's not a story. It's history. It's documented fact. When the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union, grandmothers sat on their roofs with rifles. That is a fact. When the Nazis rolled into the Soviet Union, grandmothers sat on their roofs with rifles. And 10-year-old boys took grenades and threw them. And the entire country was awakened. And when I was in Russia, they talked about how during the Second World War, they learned that all the ordinary people of the Soviet Union were heroes. All of them were heroes. Because when their homeland was attacked, when their country was invaded, it awakened a spirit of resistance, and people defended their land and defended their country in ways that shocked everyone. And there was a Superman in every village and every town fighting heroically to defeat the Nazi invaders. The masses of people are the real heroes. And we think things through. We're the ones saying, now don't kill that scab. We're the ones saying, now grandma, maybe you don't get up on the roof with the rifle there to shoot the Nazis. The masses of people, when the avalanche comes, when the floodgates open, they are going to be running forward and fighting with a ferocity that we can't imagine. There will be a fearlessness among the masses that is so bold and astronomical. To some degree, our job will be to try and hold them back a little bit. However, what we have the opportunity to do is to guide the coming explosion. That is our opportunity, to guide the coming explosion, to nudge it in the right direction. We can do that. We can do that by getting that picture of Trump and Kim everywhere. We can do that by blanketing the Libertarian Party convention with "Do You Believe in Growth" booklets. We can do that by confronting Saw Ing-wen on the streets of New York City. We can do that by having a network of people who know how to cooperate and work with each other to carry out real operations to change the course of history. We can do that by agitating and talking about economic plans and how things can be improved. We can do that. There are ways that we can do it. And it is our responsibility to do it. But at the end of the day, the masses of people are the real heroes. The masses are the real heroes. And one way that we're not going to do it is getting into a slapping contest about who owns. I'm the real communist. No, I'm the real communist. I'm not interested in that. I'm really not interested in that. I'm really not interested in it. Right. And, you know, I want to get away from the satanic appeal. I want to appeal to the best in people, and I want to build a church. Not a literal church, perhaps, but a community that is bonded in the same way that a church is bonded. People who trust each other and rely on each other and take care of each other and share common values and share a common ideology and vision and can rely on each other to get things done. I want to build a church. I want to build the church of social revolution. I want to build the church of a new America. I want to build the church of innovationism. Right? That's what I want. I want to build a group of people who can rely on each other. And that is all that I feel that I can do. And that's all that I aspire to do. And I got to say, the Uhuru movement is ecstatic about us because we have done so much to support them. In Boston, Comrade Noah went to an event. He was the only CPI member there. And Chairman O'Malley said, "Stand up, CPI. They've been with us from the beginning." And the whole room applauded for CPI. We have done everything we can to support the Uhuru movement because it's the right thing to do. It's not because we agree with the Uhuru movement. It's not because we share their approach. It's because it's the right thing to do. Right and wrong do exist. And the American government sending drones into 80-year-old Chairman O'Malley's home and kicking down the door and dragging him out of his home in handcuffs and raiding the Uhuru house in Florida. That's wrong. And trying to put three communists, three black revolutionary communists in jail for 15 years because they allegedly are agents of Russia. That's wrong, folks. It's wrong. I don't care if it's the cool thing to do. I don't care if it's the hip thing to do. I don't care if it gets you attention on social media. It's wrong what they are doing to them. And it is our basic moral obligation to stand with the Uhuru movement. It's that simple. There is no middle ground on this. There's no, well, maybe they, there's no, there's nothing. There's no middle ground. What they are doing to Chairman O'Malley, to Penny Hess and Jesse Neville is wrong. And if you have any moral anti-imperialist bone in your body, you've got to stand against it. Because if they can do that to them, they can do that to you. And they are doing it. They are starting to do it. They just raided Scott Ritter's home. They raided the home of Dimitri Simes. They prosecuted Sumi Terry, the top South Korean scholar, a former CIA agent, one of their biggest suck-ass anti-North Korean propagandists. But South Korea won't go along with their escalation, so they're trying to put her in jail. Right? And they think it's open season on anti-imperialists right now. They think that we are all so stupid and we're all caught up in calling each other names on the internet and gossiping about each other that they can get away with this. That's what they think. And we have got to prove them wrong. We have got to show that no, they can't. No, they can't. We've got to show that we're not falling for their psyop. We're not falling for their internet hysteria and their social media mind control. If they try to put a group of black revolutionaries in jail for being anti-imperialist, there will be voices from the heavens screaming against it and doing everything they can to support them. And supporting the Uhuru movement is the right thing to do. And my patience with people who claim to agree with me and think what I think, but just don't think the case is important. But they even say, oh yeah, I agree, but they don't do anything about it. But they're too busy being competitive and hostile. My patience with those kind of people has run out. And my desire to compromise with that kind of thinking and my desire to accommodate that kind of thinking has completely run out. I want to carry out operations. I want to work with people who are helpful in carrying out those operations. And I have no interest. I have absolutely no interest in accommodating people who don't understand how dangerous what they are doing to Chairman O'Malley. They are giving Chairman O'Malley a death sentence. He's 80 years old. If he gets a 5-year prison sentence or a 10-year prison sentence, he will die in prison. They want a lifelong black communist revolutionary to die in prison. That is what they are trying to do right now. And we have got to stop them. We have got to stop them from doing it. We have got to raise from the heavens. We've got to scream as loud as we possibly can and do everything that we possibly can do to stop them from doing this to Chairman O'Malley. And I do not understand why anyone Anybody who calls themselves a communist, calls themselves a socialist, calls themselves an anti-imperialist doesn't understand this and doesn't understand the urgency of this. And if somebody doesn't understand the urgency of this, I question their sincerity. They may just be naive. They may just not have lived this the way I have. They may just not have seen what goes on. They may not have understood the real threat that's happening. But they're going to learn really quick, and they're going to regret their actions if they are sincere. If they are sincere, they are going to learn quickly how dangerous this case is. We have to do everything we can to support Chairman O'Malley, to support Penny Hess, and to support Jesse Neville. We have to do that. I'm getting on a plane to Florida on Friday. I talked about it in Russia. We had a conference about it the day after they got raided. I mean, this seems obvious. Look, Chairman O'Malley. In this booklet that we gave out at the Libertarian Convention and at the DNC, we got Chairman O'Malley with Tucker Carlson. We got the Uhuru house, the house that they raided. Right and wrong does exist. And, you know, we don't have to talk about the Uhuru case. There's no requirement. There's certainly no cash incentive, no bonus for us in doing so. This is an organization that has a very different appeal than we do, that is aimed at very different demographics, has a very different approach to matters of race and such. You know, we're not getting a bonus for doing it. We're not getting more attention for ourselves for doing it, but we got to do it. It must be done, because if they can come for them, they can come for all of us. And that's why we exist, is to carry out operations, to support anti-imperialism. And by raising the alarm about what they're doing to the Uhuru 3, we're showing people the real nature of the American government. We're showing people what the American legal system is really all about, how it serves the ultra-rich and it serves the monopolies. We're creating political space. If we can defeat this indictment and these criminal charges, we are then creating political space. We are opening up space for other people to speak out, as the Uhuru have. So it is essential that we do everything we can to support the Uhuru 3. We raise their case as loudly as possible. It's essential. And it's the right thing to do. And again, this is the kind of thing you learn through time. You learn through doing. Right? Maybe you wouldn't understand this if you just read about this on the internet. Maybe you wouldn't understand this if you were still trying to own the word communism. But in real struggle, cases like this are so important. Cases like this are so important. And we have to do something about it. We've got to do something about it. So I continue to raise the alarm from the heavens about the case. Free Pavel Durov, free Kim.com, free Chairman O'Malley, free Sumi Terry, free the January 6th defendants, drop the charges against the Uhuru 3. Right? We have our work cut out for us. We really do. We really have our work cut out for us. I believe in what we're doing. And I got to tell you, these are times of dramatic shifts, but they are times of improvement. Right? You've got to adjust. You've got to focus. You've got to figure out what you need to do. And I have worked very, very hard to embed us with the right people. I have worked very, very hard to build connections. I have worked very, very hard to perfect our ability to carry out operations. And I believe we are marching ahead as an organization. And I believe that the innovationist turn is going to be important. It's going to be remembered as an important time in the history of our movement. If we are not challenging ourselves, if we are not aiming to do better than we did before, we're not going to grow. And, you make mistakes. You set a goal and you don't reach it. You go back to the drawing board and you adjust and you do better next time. You learn in life by making mistakes. You learn to ride a bike by falling. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, it really is. And that with the world as it currently is, we have to do something about it. We have to do something about it. And we have to connect with people. And we have to take action. And some people might be looking for something different. They might be looking for internet entertainment. They might be looking for a commodified identity. And I'm not here to give that to you. I never was. And that was my crime. That was my crime from the beginning. I always understood that these YouTube streams, this is 783. This is stream number 783. But I'll tell you, from stream number 1, I always understood I was building an organization. That's what I always understood. I never was in it to win the internet. I never was in it to be popular online. All of that was a plus. I was always in it to build an organization. I was always in it to build a network of people to get it done. And I was saying out of the movement to the masses. I was saying government of action to fight for working families. I was saying all of this from the beginning because this is what it's always been about. And that is why I've been targeted the way I've been targeted. And I don't want to relive all of that for you, right? We've been through it and we don't care. And that's why I continue to keep going. And that's why I'm not bothered by the setbacks we encounter or the betrayals that we face. I'm not bothered by them, really. I get annoyed. I'm disappointed in people. I am disappointed in various people. But at the same time, I realize that I am learning because every day is a test and some people have not passed the test and I will be better and stronger without them. And that's just the way these things work. And I have realized a long time ago that if you try to please everybody in this field of work, you will end up paralyzing yourself, right? If we put the mission on hold, if we compromise our principles, we're actually doing far more damage than if we lose one person or two people or three people. All right? It's better to proceed with reliable, trustworthy people than it is to try and accommodate things that are going to be a problem down the road. And I realize that, and that you just have to be confident. You have to be confident. You have to be confident and you have to press on. You have to press on. And the way we have changed discourse in this country, we basically forced a whole new wing of the socialist internet into existence. I don't know if you noticed that, but there would never have been certain voices if it wasn't for us. We carved out that space, and then the establishment scrambled to own it. There are all kinds of developments that have happened in American politics that have happened because of us. And we just have to continue the uphill march and continue carving out new spaces and continue marching into new territory and continue getting shit done. That's what we got to do. And I'm glad we're doing it. And and there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. And I couldn't stop doing this even if I wanted to. I read a book. I watch a movie. My wife and I go bowling, which we actually did a couple weeks ago, and we had a really good time, actually. I have not been bowling in years. That's a whole nother story. But, you stop, you slow down, but this is what life means to me. And I will keep going. I will keep going, and I have been tested. I have been tested, and they have shot every bullet they've got at me, and I've just continued to keep going. And that's how you know that you can trust me. And that's how you know that I will not betray you. I will not walk away. That's how you know it. I might disappoint you. I might have habits that disappoint you. I might have attributes of my personality that need improvement. There are things about me that I certainly am willing to admit could be improved upon, could be fixed, but I will not stop. That I will not do. I'm going to keep going with this, and I am not going to surrender. And I don't know what's ahead for other people, and it doesn't really concern me, honestly, because paying attention to it is not going to help me do what I need to do. And I certainly don't want to do what I do in reaction to what other people do. That doesn't help me in any way. I got a job to do. I'm doing it. I appreciate your help. I appreciate you being part of it. I want to teach you to do it better. I want to empower you to be bolder and stronger. And there you go. So thank you, everyone who stepped up to the plate. Thank you, everyone who appreciates what we have, who can embrace the love that we offer, can find the warmth that we are offering, and can get the joy from creating and building the way we build and create. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All right, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? 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 Who's with us? Fakiho from Montreal. Bob from Troy, New York. All right. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Quanos, Mr. Wonderful. Nabil from Pakistan. Dan from Los Angeles. Chris from Salt Lake City. St. Joseph, Missouri. Finger Man. Quad Cities. Denver, Colorado. Sydney. Foster in D.C. Frank in Orlando. Upper Michigan, Terry. Chicago, Gabby. West Oakland, California. Balthazar in Oakland. St. David's in Bermuda. Mariah in North Carolina. Orange County, Molly McGuire. Joe in Carolina Beach, North Carolina. Queens. Alex in Brazil. Luke from Astral. Shanty from Mexico. Anthony from Detroit. Brendan in Shallow Alto. That's clever. Courtney in Northern Virginia. Scott in Maryland. Luca in Singapore. Lycee in Florida. Richard Flagstaff. Tijuana, Mexico. Bob from Staten Island. China Seasoned Noob. Kirby in Chattanooga. Colin in Greensboro. Sherry in Cape May. Anchorage, Alaska. Samuel Barr. Very, very good. Very, very good. Names and locations. Alan in Chicago. Welcome, Alan. Good to have you with us. Do we have any Rumble rants on here on the Rumble? No, we do not. That's good because we got 7 super chats to go through. Rochester, New York. Maxim. Stephanie in Walton, Georgia. San Diego. Marshflower. Aaron lives in Rio Vista, small world. All right. Moonlight Beach, California. Scott S. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Hit the like. Oh, not going to say it. All right. Now we got 7 super chats for me to answer. That's a decent number of super chats, but please keep the super chats rolling in. The more super chats, the merrier. Gives me something to react to. And on top of that, it also supports the channel and all the work that we do here, right? And, as of now, CPI is not collecting dues. We liquidated our incorporation as part of our organizational transition. So right now, I'm basically just funding CPI with my own money, which is, a temporary phase we have to go through. Once we reincorporate, we will collect dues once again. But as of now, no one's paying dues because we liquidated for our own reasons. Right? It's a whole ball game we got to deal with. Look, I mean, life is, let me put this out there. If there's one thing, and then I'll start answering super chats. But if anyone else has any more super chats, or they can let you send any more super chats, part of the strength of life is the ability to reinvent. All right, to start over, to go in a new direction. That is strength, because if you can reinvent, you don't get into a rut. And you need to be able to reinvent. And that especially people that engage in political organizing, they need to be able to reinvent. One of the strengths of the Chinese Communist Party has been their ability to just continue reinventing themselves. What they were in the 20s, they were not in the 30s, they were not in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s. Every decade, the Chinese Communist Party completely reinvents itself practically, right? And that's why they've had all the successes that they've had in leading China. They constantly are reinventing their approach, constantly reinventing their policies. And that's what you've got to do. If you want to be a living, thriving organization, you must be constantly reinventing yourself. If not, you get into a rut. I was in a political group that was in a rut. They were in an awful rut. And I saw what that's like. And I do not want that, right? We have to be reinventing. We have to be setting tangible goals and achieving them. We have to be trying out new tactics. We have to be aiming higher, right? And I will never get into a rut. I'm never going to do it. And that I am happy. If you look at how many times CPI in its current history, I mean, we've only been around a few years and we've already reinvented ourselves a number of times. That's organizational strength. All right. There's a book on Malcolm X. It's called Malcolm X, A Life of Reinvention. It talks about how that was a strength for Malcolm X as well. He was constantly reinventing himself. But anyway, all right, let's start answering these questions. The year Telegram was created, there was massive protests in Russia, allegedly pro-democracy. What was going on back there? Who was behind it? Well, pro-democracy protests in Russia. I mean, I think you know who was behind that. And I think you know what that was about. I think, do I need to tell you that was the United States? That was George Soros. That was the color revolution apparatus. That was the forces that didn't like Russia becoming new and modern and independent. I shouldn't have to tell you that, but that's what was going on. And that's what's interesting about Telegram is that Telegram was, has been very critical of Russia. Doesn't matter, though. They're not open access for the United States. They're not the property of the U.S. government and State Department. They're not giving back channels to American intelligence. And so they're on the chopping block. I also want to mention that French imperialism is an interesting animal, right? I wrote this book, Letter to Bob Avakian. I wrote it because the Revolutionary Communist Party, the RCP, has basically, deteriorated into being an outlet that's more or less an asset of French intelligence. And a lot of U.S. leftist politics in the 90s was more or less under the thumb of French imperialism and French intelligence. And in some cases that looked, it was less obvious because it led people to do good things because the interests of French imperialism and U.S. imperialism were at odds, especially during the Bush years. And, the French imperialists, they are much more woke, I guess you could say. But at the same time, they're still imperialists. What they've done in Africa, what they've done all over the world is atrocious. And, there's a lot there, a lot I could say. There are big differences between the French imperialists and the British and the American imperialists. But at the same day, they're still for the global imperialist system, and they're still against Russia and China. So there you go. All right. Freeing Assange was a palate cleanser for the latest wave of crackdowns. That's interesting. I think freeing Assange, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't involved in those deals. I feel like freeing Assange was related to the upcoming presidential election, because you'll notice that a number of documents were taken down from the WikiLeaks website. The DNC leaks were all taken down. And I think there was a feeling on Joe Biden's part that as they headed toward November, it would be better with all the Hillary Clinton files and all that not up there. Right now, they're still archived on archive.org, but I think it had a lot to do with the upcoming election. And I think they didn't want attention on Julian Assange during the election. I think they didn't want people going through the Twitter files. And I think they didn't want to open up the 2016 can of worms again. That's my feeling. But it was also that the case had gone on, it had drawn on for so long, and there was kind of a stalemate. I think there was a very big section of the U.S. ruling class that really did want to have Julian Assange come here and stand trial and be tortured and all that. And there were others that said that sets a dangerous precedent. Let's not go there. And there was kind of a stalemate. And they said, okay, we've drawn this out for long enough. Let's just finish this up. That's my feeling, is that it was a stalemate. And it was also, they didn't want WikiLeaks to be a factor in the 2024 presidential elections. It clearly was the Democratic Party that arranged the freeing, because the fact that all the Hillary Clinton emails were taken down, all the DNC leaks were taken down. I mean, it was the Democrats. It was the Democratic Party that arranged that deal. And I think they are more concerned about the upcoming election. So we'll see. We'll see. Mistakes of the Black Panthers. Now, this is important. Okay, because when people say Black Panthers, they don't realize that the Black Panthers as an organization went through a number of leaps and evolutions, right? You ask me mistakes of the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers as an organization, there's a lot that people don't know. People know they did a free breakfast program. They did. People know they did armed patrols, followed the police around. They did. There's a lot more to it than that. First off, the Black Panthers were a breakaway, or like a renegade project of RAM. So what happened was, during the 1960s, you had the civil rights movement, and there were a number of organizations that engaged in civil disobedience to demand that Black people have the right to vote. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. There was another organization that was mainly aimed at college students, and it was called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. It was led by Stokely Carmichael. In addition to that, in Monroe, North Carolina, you had the leader of the NAACP, Robert F. Williams, and he had formed an armed militia to protect Black people, and he had fled to Cuba. And from Cuba, he was doing these broadcasts into the U.S. South. And they were called Radio Free Dixie. And they were broadcasts into the U.S. South, urging Black people to take up arms and revolt against racism. So you had the broadcasts of Robert F. Williams in the South, and then you had the civil rights movement that was funded by the Ford Foundation and the Rockefeller think tanks. And it was a very mainstream movement that was supported, supported by the Kennedy family, et cetera. And among the mainstream of the civil rights movement, you had this group called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Well, among the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, a kind of secret society was formed. And it was members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee who listened to the broadcasts of Robert F. Williams and wanted to form a new communist party that was aligned with China and was more radical than the regular Communist Party. And they formed the Revolutionary Action Movement, RAM. And they had a meeting at Ohio University, I think, Ohio State University or Columbus College or something like that. It was in Ohio. And they were kind of a secret society of young Black activists that were in SNCC, but were interested in communism, wanted to form a new communist organization. And the Revolutionary Action Movement faced all kinds of government repression. they tried to frame them up for trying to blow something up. They were like framed up, and there was a whole effort to get them acquitted. They were facing heavy prison time at one point, and it was just this kind of network among young civil rights activists that was very interested in communism. So you had that going on. Bobby Seale and Huey Newton were in the student nonviolent, or they were in RAM. They were in the Revolutionary Action Movement. And they lived in Oakland, California. And they were two black activists who were in the Revolutionary Action Movement. And they had the idea of doing the armed patrols. After a number of incidents of police brutality, they studied the law of California, and they had the idea of following the police around with shotguns and law books and tape recorders, and, you know, engaging in these armed patrols to confront the police. And they had a meeting at the public library with the Revolutionary Action Movement and with the Progressive Labor Party and with the Socialist Workers Party and with the Communist Party USA, which were those were the major communist groups at the time. And they said, we're going to do this. And all the groups told them not to do it. They told them it was left adventurist, it was dangerous, the police are just going to shoot you, don't do it. Well, they did it anyway. And I think they quit the Revolutionary Action Movement in order to do it. I think it was considered against the rules or whatever. And they just said, you know what, we're going to do the armed patrols anyway. And so they started doing the armed patrols. And the name of their group was the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. And they were somewhat modeled on the Deacons for Defense and Robert F. Williams and the NAACP. And they picked the name Black Panther because in Mississippi, the Democratic Party of Mississippi, which was the ruling party, it wouldn't allow black people. And it actually had the words white supremacy on its logo. And so the Freedom Democratic Party was this new political party that had been formed. So when black people would run for office in Mississippi, and it was called the Freedom Democratic Party, and its symbol had been a Black Panther, right? And, you know, in the South, there were a lot of people that were illiterate at the time. And when you went to vote, part of the law, because there was so much illiteracy, was that they had to have an image to go with every party. So next to the Democrat, they would have a donkey. Next to the Republican, they would have an elephant. And so then next to the Freedom Democrat candidate, they had a Black Panther, right? And the Black Panther was the symbol of the Freedom Democratic Party of Mississippi. And so when the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was registering people to vote, they would register them to vote for the Freedom Democratic Party of Mississippi. And so when they formed this group to carry out their armed patrols in the state of, in California, in the city of Oakland, they called it the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. That was the name they gave it. And they did the patrols, and all the communists denounced them originally. The Communist Party said they thought they were FBI agents, that it was a provocation. The Socialist Workers Party called it left adventurism, and everybody denounced it. But they did the patrols, and a lot of the people in the black community in Oakland were very impressed with them. So then in California, they decided they were going to pass a law, a gun control law, to prevent them from doing their armed patrols. And so when they tried to pass the gun control law, again, they consulted with lawyers, they studied the law, and what did they do? They walked into the state capitol building with guns, which was legal at the time. Not legal anymore. Don't do that. Especially don't do it because I said on this stream that they did it back then. It's totally illegal now. But back then there was no law against carrying firearms into the state legislature in California. And so as the government was discussing this law to make it illegal for them to do their armed patrols, a few of their members walked into the state capitol building with their guns, and that immediately got a huge amount of media attention. Oh my God, black people with guns walking into the government building. And they went viral. I mean, there was no social media back then, but they got a huge amount of attention for their armed patrols, and became very popular. And they just kind of became the symbol of black radicalism. What was interesting is that, at the time there was a wave of anti-colonial movements happening in the world, right? You had, Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, African socialism. You had Gaddafi in Libya. You had Fidel Castro in Cuba. You had all kinds of anti-colonial movements in the world, and they wore uniforms that looked like the uniforms of anti-colonial fighters. They wore berets on their heads. They wore like military style uniforms. And so in the media, it was like, oh my God, the anti-colonial movement, the third world revolutionaries have come home. And that was, they became a popular thing. And so all over the country, many black radicals joined them on this basis of seeing them as, oh, this is the black communist organization. These are the black revolutionaries. And at first all the communist groups denounced them, but then the communist groups started to change their perspective or whatever. So then, so one man who joined them was a guy named Eldridge Cleaver. Now, Eldridge Cleaver was a convicted rapist, and he was doing time in prison for rape. And in prison, he had written a number of articles about being a black man and about being a rapist. And he wrote a book called Soul on Ice, it's like a compilation of articles. And he wrote about, he had raped white women because he wanted to take revenge on white men. And he saw white women as the property of white men. And he thought that was a way to get back at white men. And he didn't like how black men are attracted to white women because it's like self-hatred. They're not attracted to the black women. It's like self-hatred. And he wrote this very poetic book called Soul on Ice that he wrote when he was in federal prison. Or in state prison in California. And they published his articles in Ramparts magazine, which was like the radical left magazine of the Bay Area. So Eldridge Cleaver got out of prison, and Eldridge Cleaver was very well known for his kind of poetic essays about being a black man, being a convicted rapist, black man. He got out of prison. And Eldridge Cleaver joined the Black Panther Party, and he joined as kind of a celebrity because he was known for writing these essays. And so Eldridge Cleaver joined the Black Panthers. Now, the Black Panthers had been doing their armed patrols, and their armed patrols had resulted in a number of shootouts. Huey Newton was facing the death penalty in California because he was charged with killing a police officer in one of the shootouts. And, there was a whole campaign to free Huey Newton. The Black Panthers were Bobby Seale was not in prison. He was out of prison. But he was going around, and they were trying to free Huey Newton, and they ran for public office. The Peace and Freedom Party of California ran them for public office, and they were this radical black organization that existed. So Huey Newton was locked up and facing the death penalty, but they had debate about what was the right way to go. Now, in Chicago, Fred Hampton, he formed the free breakfast program that he started, and he started a rainbow coalition, and the Black Panthers started uniting with various different ethnic gangs in Chicago. There were young Puerto Ricans, the Young Lords. There was the Iwar-Kun, which was an Asian American organization. There were different groups. There was even a group of white people called the Young Patriots that used the Confederate flag as their symbol, and that they formed an alliance with different groups. Fred Hampton was murdered. He was killed in December of 1969. But there was big debate and eventually Huey Newton was released from prison. He didn't get the death penalty. He was acquitted. And so after Huey Newton was acquitted, there was debate within the Black Panther Party about which way to move forward. And there were basically two positions. The West Coast was headed by Huey Newton, who was the founder of the Black Panthers, and he said that they needed to launch survival programs, right? They needed to launch, the free breakfast program and community ambulance services and community health care clinics, and they should be providing services in the Black community to as many people as possible. They called that survival pending revolution. Whereas Eldridge Cleaver argued that they should be launching armed struggle, that it was time to launch urban guerrilla warfare. And that, and so the West Coast of the Black Panthers, people started referring to them as the Black Panther Party Newton. And the East Coast of the Black Panthers, they started referring to them as the Black Panther Party, Black Panther Party Cleaver, right? And those were the two Black Panther parties. The Black Panther Party, parenthesis, Cleaver, began engaging in left adventurous terrorism. They murdered police officers, they blew up buildings, and then Eldridge Cleaver fled the United States. He moved to Cuba, and then he lived in North Korea for a while, and Algeria, and he lived in different places. Huey Newton, on the other hand, they continued their program of survival pending revolution. And the Black Panther Party Newton, they built a school, a regular school in Oakland, California, that was like a high school. It was like you could graduate from it. It was a private school. And they had and the amount of public programs and services they had was not small. Sickle cell anemia testing. They did a massive amount of public work, and in Oakland, California, in particular, they were very large. They had a school. They had healthcare clinics that they ran. They controlled certain neighborhoods and all of that. And they were a massive organization in Oakland. And in other cities, they had a layer of support. Huey Newton was the leader of the group. And then the Black Panther Party Cleaver, pretty much, it was swept up by the FBI. I mean, it was, once they launched their left adventurous terrorism, they were all getting arrested and locked up. And then what was left of them evolved into another group called the Black Liberation Army, which, interestingly, Tupac's, family were in it. Assata Shakur and others. Tupac, the rapper, his family is connected with the Black Liberation Army, which is a whole nother story. But the Black Liberation Army is what kind of evolved out of the East Coast Black Panthers. The West Coast Black Panthers were an institution in California for a long time, heavily infiltrated by the government, and a lot of violence. They faced violence at the hands of criminal organizations in the Black community. There was internal violence that went on. Huey Newton appears to have had some very serious psychological problems, and eventually became a drug addict, and eventually he was killed. And the circumstances of his death are not exactly clear, but it could have been involved with drugs. The Huey Newton met a very tragic end. Elaine Brown became the first woman to lead the Black Panthers. I met her in Cleveland. She's an anti-death penalty activist and an anti-prison activist now. Elaine Brown, became a woman who was their leader. They ran a lot of institutions in Oakland, California, but it was a struggle. And by 1981, 1982, they had ultimately liquidated. But they were weakened, etc. I mean, they struggled, but they were solidly anti-imperialist. They were aligned with Cuba. They were aligned with North Korea. They were aligned with China. And they frequently sent delegations to major communist countries, and they were one of the largest and most visible communist organizations during the 70s, but they were a Black nationalist communist organization. They were for Black people only. You could be a white supporter and, finance them, give them money. And they sat down with and worked with various Black or white communist groups, like the, various new communist movement organizations, the Workers' World Party, the Revolutionary Communist Party, the October League, etc. And ultimately, their vision was to eventually build a multiracial communist party. Huey Newton had this theory of intercommunalism, which was the idea that everyone would organize their own community first, and then they would merge together into one revolutionary organization. That was the idea. That was the idea. You have to organize your own people first, and that they had a critique of the Communist Party and its history, how black people had felt they were taken advantage of and used, by white communists and all kinds of things. They had their own ideas. By the early 80s, they had fallen apart as a group. They couldn't continue to exist. It was unfortunate, but they were largely a product of their circumstances, and that there was a global anti-colonial movement, and many in the black community identified with it, and they developed. And they built a real organization. Let me emphasize this. They weren't an internet club. There was no internet back then. What made the Black Panthers what they were was what they actually did. It was the operations that they carried out. It was the armed patrols. It was the free breakfast program. It was the community health care clinics. It was what they actually did, right? And they engaged in a huge amount of community work, and that's why they existed. And they built a high school. They built an actual high school. Can you imagine that? There was, up until the early 80s, there was a high school that was a communist, Marxist, Leninist, Black Panther high school, right? I mean, they built a real organization. And that's why they matter. In communism in America, you want to study the history of communism in America, there are two organizations that actually mattered. One is the Black Panthers, and the other is the Communist Party USA until the 1950s, until McCarthyism. None of the other groups really ever accomplished very much. There's some of them did a little bit here or a little bit there, but for the most part, none of them really accomplished that much. The new communist movement of the 70s was a very noble try, but ultimately, except for a few places like Detroit, they didn't really get much done. The Workers' World Party, they staged very effective national anti-war rallies starting in the early 80s. And they were key in kind of pushing the Vietnam War movement to more anti-imperialist directions, but really they didn't have a base. They never had a base. They were kind of an entity in New York City, but they never really had a base anywhere. The Socialist Workers' Party, the Trotskyites, were very effective in organizing the Teamsters in Minneapolis, and they got the Teamsters Union in Minneapolis going, and they had a lot of influence within the Teamsters Union until World War II, when they were all put in prison, and that was the end of that. And that's really about it. That's really about it. I draw heavily from the writings of Nelson Peary, who was a leader of the Communist Party, who eventually formed the Communist Labor Party and was a Maoist communist. And he was very effective in what he did in Detroit with the Dodge Revolutionary Union movement, the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. And he knew a lot, and he had a lot of deep understanding. But ultimately, his group never really developed a base. And what's left of his organization has kind of deteriorated into liberal NGOs at this point. They call themselves League of Revolutionaries for a New America, and they're just kind of liberal poverty NGO activists. They don't really have a base among the population, and they're not really putting out a coherent message. So there's that. And if you read my book, Out of the Movement to the Masses, the textbook, I talk about all these other groups, but really the only two groups that really had a mass following were the Black Panthers and the Communist Party USA. And that's why they're worth studying. So I hope that answered your question there. All right. What's your opinion on protective tariffs? I think part of loving the country is ensuring the wages. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know Karl Marx believed in free trade, but he was wrong. Marx didn't have the Leninist theory of imperialism. Marx believed that if we spread the capitalist market everywhere, that would lay the basis for the workers to rise up. But we're not pure Marxists here, and Lenin certainly didn't think that. Lenin wrote about imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, international markets, the export of capital, and I have no problem with protective tariffs at all. I think protective tariffs are fine. That nations have to implement them in order to stand up to the international bankers. I think the IMF and the World Bank are no good. And also, there's a weird phobia of tariffs among some leftists. Some leftists have in your mind, if you start talking about tariffs and all of that, then you're a right-wing isolationist. It's like, no, you're not. And I mean, I'm anti-globalization. I'm opposed to the World Bank and the IMF and the World Trade Organization. And I think that protective tariffs and labor legislation and build strengthening the industries of your country, national champions, all of that is necessary. All righty. Poor Scott. I think he got doxxed. I've been doxxed too. I mean, I'm not going to say how I know, but it's whatever. I mean, I've been doxxed. I mean, Scott's been through a lot worse than being doxxed. I mean, his home was raided by the FBI, and I mean, he was imprisoned at one point, but I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I'm basically doxxed at this point, and I realize that, but I survive. I don't, I've been doxxed for a long time, it's whatever. I don't, and I mean, look, I mean, Scott is a very, very heroic person who I really, really look up to. And the fact that they raided his home, I'm telling you how serious all of this is. We live in a time where it's very dangerous to be doing the kind of work that we do. And that's why we have to take this seriously. And there's a lot of people that are just screwing around on the internet, and I'm not. And I see a role that I can play. I see a contribution that I can make. And I see a lot of people that just, I don't know. I don't know what to say. They just don't get it. They don't get it. I mean, they don't get it, and they're looking for something different. They're looking for something that I can't offer them, and I don't want to offer them. Right? Maybe if I was, so I'm trying to build a real network of people that can carry out real operations. I'm headed to Florida to support the Uhuru movement Friday. I'm headed to Florida. We have done real operations to promote anti-imperialism. We know what we're doing. And there's a lot of other people that just don't get it. And I don't know. I mean, I can't try to please them because I'm doing something different. So, I'm honored by every opportunity we've had to give a platform to Scott Ritter, to support Scott Ritter. Same for the Uhuru movement, and the same for anybody else. And I stand with Scott, and Scott probably doesn't agree with a lot of what I say here, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that's the important thing too. You have to understand that when they come for one of us, we've all got to speak out, and that we're not going to fall for the psyop of everybody, talking smack about everybody and all of that. Look, I am what is the right word? I'm understanding that we are in a period of transition. Let me put it that way. And I think there are a number of people who really want me to chase after them, and I'm not going to, right? I mean, if you don't get what I'm doing here, I can't make you get it, right? I can do my best to talk at you every night on these streams, and I can get you to get it, but it's like, I really don't have time for it, right? I mean, I really don't have time for chasing after people, and I don't want to work with people that could prove to be a danger down the road. I really don't. I mean, if people don't seem to get why certain things are not okay, and why certain other communities are completely different than what we do here, if they don't get it at this point, I'm not going to convince them by just talking at them, or by getting angry with them, or by being patient with them, or pandering to them. And it's like, be gone. I be gone. I am really, I have been through so much in the last couple of years. I have been tested in so many different ways, and I appreciate that. But in the process of doing that, I have learned that it is better to have liabilities gone. It is better to have, if there's a weak link in the chain that's going to break it and reattach a new link. Don't, just don't, right? Just don't. And you just cannot. I mean, there's a lot of shit that just doesn't fucking matter. Okay? There is a lot of shit that just doesn't fucking matter. I hate to use, I'm being really foul-mouthed tonight, but, and that there are people who get caught up in a lot of this shit that doesn't fucking matter. And I mean, if you get caught up in that, be gone. Be gone. See ya. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. And we need to transition as an organization. We're already doing it into being the kind of organization that does not attract the wrong kind of person and starts to attract the right kind of person. And so, I mean, this is spring cleaning. And we're doing a lot more all of a sudden than we have been doing. We're getting a lot more done, but at the same time, there's a lot of people, finding their way out, and that's necessary. I hate to say that. I just, but it's just, every person who has left CPI recently, I haven't been surprised at all. I've just been like, oh, okay, see ya. Right. And I think some of them really want me to stop and like read some big manifesto they've written or something. It's like, no, I mean, okay, I'll look at what you say. What they say is always silly. And I just am like, okay. I mean, it's like, I have learned, and I have really learned through the course of doing this so long, I have learned that you have to do this from a position of strength. Okay. And I'm just telling you the truth. You have to do this from a position of strength. The second that you are begging to be on someone else's stage, the second that you are begging to let someone else let you join their group, the second that you are trying to gain the approval of one of these people, you've already lost, right? We have a job to do, and we're going to do that job, right? And I'm sorry, if you don't want to do the job, if you want to compromise with people that are very hostile to CPI, want to destroy CPI, are probably, I don't want to say more, but, I've seen a lot more than I can talk about on these streams. I know a lot more than I can talk about on these streams, and I've been through stuff and all of that, and some people just don't get it. Some people just don't get it. They just don't understand, okay? There are certain things that people just don't get. And I've talked about this on previous streams. I'm not going to go into detail. But if you don't get it, I am not going to try to convince you of it. I would rather you just go. Really, seriously. I mean, there are certain things that in order to work with me, I don't know. I feel like there are certain standards of just basic human empathy and decency that you owe me and you owe everyone else in the organization, right? And if you don't get that, and you don't value what we do here, and you don't see how what we are doing here is different than what some other jackoffs are doing, I am not going to waste my time and breath trying to convince you. And the second that I start changing what we do to just try and convince you to get it, we've already lost, right? I mean, sometimes in life, you just have to be firm, and you just have to say, no, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. I mean, look, I am not here to entertain you, right? I'm not a monkey dancing. I'm not, this isn't circus entertainment. This is not performance art. This is not intellectual stimulation. This is stream number 783. And since stream number 1, this channel has been focused on building an organization, right? And that's it. That's what we do. And I have been targeted in every way possible. And I'm not shocked. And, there's been a lot of turnover over the years. New people come, old people go. And that's just how this is. Okay. That's just how this is. And I have gotten used to it. I have reinvented myself and my outlook, and our organization has reinvented so many times. And that's because we take this seriously and we do what we're doing. Yeah. And so that's about it. And yeah, I have been saying that. And it's about the same thing I've always been saying. I just, I stick to my guns. That's it. You know what I mean? We got a job to do, and we're going to do it. All right. Next question. It's not a question. It's Dan Keating. Thumbs up, Dan. Much love. Anti-Imperialist Action Network. That is what we are striving to build with the Center for Political Innovation. That's probably not a good name, though, right? That sounds like some weird anti-imperialist coalition, right? That sounds a little bit LARPy, right? That sounds like, I don't know. That sounds, that sounds like the 1970s New Communist Movement or something. But, that's essentially what we're building. I don't think we should call it that, though. That name is a little bit, I don't know. It is what it is. But there we go. I just like the topics of the stream and how Caleb presents the info. Yeah, that's fine. You're welcome to keep watching. You're welcome to keep watching. I will say that I do fantasize in my head about the day that these streams are not out there for the public anymore, and that I'm only streaming for people that have chosen to be part of this community. Now, you troglodyte, you ask good questions, you're polite. Okay, that's fine. But I will say there are a lot of people watching probably right now with bad intentions. And I don't want to perform for those people because I'm not an entertainer, right? I am an organizer. I am building my community. I'm educating people about anti-imperialism. That is what I am here to do. Um, you know, and you know, and That's what I'm here to do. And I guess it's okay that you're watching. I'm not going to send you away. I'm not going to think that you shouldn't be here. But at the end of the day, I mean, look, I am interested in building an organization. I'm interested in carrying out operations. That's what CPI exists to do. That's what I exist to do. And, I just, you know, you know, I really like Wallace Wattles and his writings. I really do like them. And one thing he points out is he says you should always give more to the world than you want to receive in return. And he's right. And I feel like I give a lot of myself to the world, and I have received in return great things, right? In terms of, of the life that I have and the opportunities I've been presented. But part of me wonders if I should give it to people, if I should make all of myself available to people who do not want to use what I do for good. I just laid out a huge amount of knowledge here about the history of the Black Panthers. Well, I'm glad to make that available, but at the end of the day, I feel like there are people that will watch that and learn from it and use that information to go work against me. And I don't compete, I create, right? And I will say this, and I've said this before, okay? Part of the reason, this is another side to the whole innovationist turn, part of the reason we need to move away from calling ourselves communists is because calling yourself a communist in America makes you a slim minority. And then not being woke on top of that makes you a slim minority of a slim minority. And the problem that I am seeing right now, and it's a wake-up call for me, but it's the problem that I am seeing, is that there is a never-ending amount of competitiveness among this small minority of a small minority. Right? If you assume that the pie is only this big, the only way your slice can get bigger is cutting into someone else's. And what I am observing in many different places right now is this pathetic scramble to seize as much of the tiny pie as possible. And it's embarrassing. And it is a scarcity mindset. You are assuming we can never build a mass movement. You are assuming that we can never be anything but an internet niche. And based on that, you are trying to be the boss of something irrelevant. Right? And I see a lot of that going on right now, and not just from one place, from multiple places, okay? And I've been watching it for a long time, and for a while I thought it was getting better. I was convinced. I started seeing the same people at different events. I saw David Rovics performing at one place, and I thought, oh, he's played at our events, and I felt like things were getting better. But then, no. And then there were some people that got very badly hurt, and I thought, okay, they're learning from this. No. And I am just seeing this from every different angle right now. I am seeing people wanting to be the boss of a very, very, very small and irrelevant minority of people. And it's like it doesn't occur to them that we could ever have a real movement. It just occurs to them that they need to be the boss of the tiny, 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 tiny minority of people. Look, in terms of the wing of communism that CPI has previously occupied, which at this point we don't want to occupy. We want to get out of there as fast as we can because it's just so ridiculous. The wing of communism that CPI has occupied, there are a total of 400 people that will show up at anything in that space. Now, that doesn't mean there's not more people who watch online. That doesn't really mean much, right? But in terms of people who will actually show up at events, there are 400 people in America at this point that will participate. 400 at the most, maybe 500 if you're generous, right? Maybe if you had events on the West Coast and the East Coast and the Midwest at the same time, you could get 500, 600 people at all three events or something. I don't know. We are not talking about a huge group of people. We are talking about a very, very, very small niche of people. And if all you aspire to do is be the boss of that space, you are aiming very, very, very low. Chase, I'm not even going to reply to that. There's no way I can even acknowledge that super chat you sent in without the floodgates of stupidity opening, and I don't care, right? But I'm telling you, the wing of people who identify with communism that CPI has, what do you call it? What's the right word? Inhabited or embedded itself in is very, 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 very small. Okay? Sorry, Chase. Thanks for understanding, but it's like if I even put that on the screen, it's the end of the world. But I'm answering what you're saying, basically. And we have to do better than that. We have to do better than that. We have to do better than that. I'm sorry, but we have to do better than that. I mean, look what's happening to Scott Ritter. Look what's happening to the Uhuru movement. Look what's happening. We have to do better than this. We really have to do better than this. And, it needs to be done. And it's interesting because there was an organizational rupture in CPI about 3 months ago. And it has just kind of continued. And it's interesting because I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised. I'm impressed, but I'm not impressed. I'm disappointed in some people, but it's a relief. We just have to change. And change is not easy. But the world around us is changing. And we are learning to do new things, and things don't always go so smoothly. Gabby worked her butt off in Chicago with the outreach that she did. My hat goes off to you and to Ellie and to John and to all the people who helped out in Chicago in different ways. Gavin and Killian and others. And my hat goes off to you. But, we did great work, but are there things that I myself could have done better? Are there decisions that I made about different things that got done that I regret? Yes, there are. And there are, but we're learning. And that's the thing. We're learning. We have to learn it. And it's just playtime is over. It's time to take the training wheels off. We've been riding with training wheels, and it has gotten to the point that we have just seen that things really need to change. And there are also people that just don't get it. They just don't get it. But, I'm spitting truth. Thank you. I'm educating people. I'm doing the best I can. And I'm just going to keep doing it. Right. And yeah, so I could be repeating myself, but I guess I will stop repeating myself. Yes, shout out to the Chicago CPI people. They did a great job. Shout out to John. We always mess up, and we got space for improvement always. Absolutely. And shout out to John, who's headed to Chicago or headed to Florida for the Uhuru trial. I'm headed down there also. I think this is important. I think you should too. And I gave a pretty impassioned speech earlier about why it's important. And, we just continue. We just continue. And I mean, You know, there's a Bob Dylan song that it gets quoted sometimes. Let us not speak falsely now. The hour is getting late. And, you know, that gets quoted here and there. But ultimately, it's saying that, look, you know, when you're running out of time, sometimes you just have to, there's disagreements and you can't beat around the bush anymore. You just got to say, look, there's a disagreement here. We see it this way, you see it this way, and we got to go our separate ways, or we got to hash it out, right? And that's kind of what Bob Dylan is alluding to in that song. And you'll reach times in your life where you're just like, okay, we can keep dancing around each other and we can keep, you know, otherwise, or we can just be like, look, let's just deal with this. So yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. And yeah, if anyone else has anything they want me to talk about, I see more people have piled in, and that's good. I will talk about it. But you know, it is getting late, so I could end the stream right here. I see that more people have piled in, and that's good. I'm here to answer your questions. If anyone's got any questions, you know, but you know, I am, I don't know. What is the right word? I am happy with all that we have done. I'm feeling confident about all we have achieved, but I am also planning ahead, and I am also mapping things out. And we have our goal for next summer for the convention. We do want to do a workshop, you know, in October. We've talked about that. I'm headed to Uhuru, you know, the Uhuru trial coming up. I mean, we got plans. We've got plans to carry out. We've got stuff that needs to be done, and we're gonna achieve our plans. So yeah. Yeah, I guess that's it. Folks. Moving forward, I could just repeat myself and talk in circles all night, but I am not going to do that. I gave you an update on the arrest of Pavel Durov. I gave you an update on everything going on there and the outcomes for the election and where we're headed, what we're doing. So there we go, folks. All right. Well, it's been fun. I'm going to put on the closing music, and I will be back soon. I will say it was very hard for me to stream tonight. I was the allergies, and I was tired, but I got on, and I'm glad I got on. And hopefully I'm back on tomorrow night. Talk to y'all soon. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.